Getting right back into it, this is where I left off in my last video of the multi-item sorter version 4. The main areas I wanted to progress moving forward was overall speed. This section right here, I was going to trim this clock down, kind of get rid of this water mechanic with the dropper shooting the item down. And this being a roughly a 40 game tick clock down here. Made some things interesting by trying to speed it up. Had to come up with some of them were kind of small to depending on where certain mechanics happened. Because once you speed it up too fast, like this piston will just stay activated the whole time. So I had to make changes to that. But so moving over here, this was the version 5. So right off the bat, it doubled the index up. So yeah, that is going to be a little bit more of a chore because you have to duplicate whatever you do on either side to have the same in there. So, and of course you have to dedicate twice as many index items as well. But I don't think I really went over this in my last video, but if you can see that rail over here, every time I take an item out, it's flipping because the power signal for it drops by 1, and then that will trigger the rail, and then obviously the one below it as well to allow the minecarts to go through it or whatnot. So the way you would do this, if you wanted to add items to it, you would take one here and take a filter item out, whatever it is, and then do the same thing over here. And then that way, if you were to take an item out, it would shift it. So, you know, because like things like ender pearls and things that stack to 16 would have a more than a 1-to-1 ratio, so you might have to take it out. And the ultimate goal is one item from a 64 stackable is removed, and that changes the power signal. So you just have to kind of finagle it to get the right one. As long as removing one reduces the power level to a 1, you're fine. So up here I have, this is a 16 game tick clock down below and up here. This switches the rails to get a perfect split between the minecarts going down this path and this path. And up here is the detection for the minecart to see if it's empty or not, because then it'll reroute it to then get destroyed. And then also, if it's not empty, it'll send off the index cart as well. The index didn't change, the input, excuse me, didn't change too much down here from the previous versions. I did have to split it apart because once it became fast enough, you would have issues with the cart pulling out items from the other cart because they were too close together. But the general overall feel for this is pretty similar to the other ones. But once I got the 16 game tick down, although I haven't like fully tested this one out, but it was for what I messed with it, it was working pretty well. I was doing some timing on the rails and stuff, and it looked like it was 24 game ticks to reset the rails and everything. And I was like, oh, I could probably get it down to 12 game ticks then, you know, because it doubles up on each side. So each side would have 24 game ticks in between the next cart. So that's ultimately what I've been working on all this time. And this time around, I thought it'd be nice, especially with it being directional. And I know there's people out there that like playing with shulker boxes. So I made 8 versions of it that are directional, and one will have shulker boxes and one won't. So like these ones face a certain direction and they're labeled as such. Specifically like the input, you can see I'm facing west here, so it'll say a west input, and then if it has shulker box, it'll say with shulker to determine which version you would fit you best. But so there was a lot of working out some issues, some small, some big, having it break a lot, trying to work with this speed at 12 game tick. I had to completely rework a lot of stuff on the input, rebuild the input from scratch for the most part. So what I have here are a bunch of shulker boxes filled with basically these kinds of items for slab block, stairs, and there would be with the insorted 33 total. And so there's enough for what you see in here. So every column has this equivalent, all in these boxes right here. So it would effectively double what's in there already. And so I'm going to run that while I'm explaining things so you can see it in action. Okay. So immediately the carts are taking those shulker boxes and they're being separated over here and then dropped into a water stream to then go up to the same unloader that Rapscallion used for just unloading it very quickly with a bunch of carts. And then it breaks, drops all the items out to then be met up with the item stream for the normal input chest. Come up, over, and then angled such on the plate so that the carts will hit it at an angle. So this is how fast it's coming out. I had so many issues with the input here with the filters because I had some problems with like the hoppers not pulling the items down. So having it come from both sides that way, and they all share the same filters. So these chests would equalize because it comes out so fast. It had to be at this speed or else you'd run out of filters in a certain hopper. And then separating them before they go up for the ease of these mechanics up here. And also the clock being down here, I was able to make it just the one clock instead of having the one up above. And this was another issue. I offset the time a little bit for the rail because that would occasionally, very rarely, cause a problem with the minecarts backing up. I haven't had an issue ever since I added that in there, that extra torch delay. And so this is how fast it's going at 12 game ticks. We have the same protection if the pressure plate has too many items on it. Based on this, it'll send a signal that will then input lock, which also shares a signal from if we're running out of minecarts on the input. So real quick, you can kind of see the items going off here. It's really pretty. You can see this was just for display purposes for this video, but every single light that's on is item transfer at hopper speed. So it's pretty fast. I think it averages around with a load of this size and variety, you can get up to like 95 to 100 items per second, and sustained over 10 minutes for like all these shulker boxes or however long it takes. I can't remember the exact amount, but and so it still unloads at double hopper speed. And the barrel is the buffer for effectively handling surges. The reason that's important is if it's twice as fast unloading the carts, then that means you'll be sending them back to the beginning, which will then prevent the time, or it'll minimize the times where the system shuts down because you don't have enough carts on the input. And that can happen if you overload a few columns with just a lot of items. because then you'll just have a bunch of carts waiting. Because I tested a lot where I sent like tire shulkers to a single column at a time, and they pile up, and eventually you just don't have the carts coming back. And that's from my experience and from the people I've talked to. That's generally not how our people are using multi-item sorters. But I tried to test that in a lot of different ways with one item, two items, that kind of thing. Had to work a lot with the timings on these carts going to the same column so they didn't cause any collisions or just the overlap. And I had to change where the certain rails were to prevent items from being pulled out, and having empty carts stuck in the cart unloader there. So instead of having that water pathway down below where the item gets dropped down and then goes into the columns, the items that are from the index mine carts get dropped back off into these hoppers for the carts. When they come into the columns, they will pull the item before they go back down, returning it that way. And then when the unloader, the empty shulker boxes will come out through here. And then I made use of the fact that there was already a way to shoot the items out this way. And so it comes up here, goes into this setup where it'll separate the shulker boxes from the non-shulker boxes, so the other non-stackable items. But that way you'll have a column of the empty ones, and then you can also have the non-stackable items with those in there. Overflow, still a thing on this one, and the unsorted as well. So now the downside with a lot of the speed is you're going to have temporary periods of higher entity lag. That's not a problem for me. You can see it's not really bad. I wouldn't be doing anything complicated while this is going on, but the great thing about the speed is it's such a short duration. You don't have to worry about it. Can sort of tire a couple double chests in like less than a minute. So you don't have to worry about it too often. Now, since working the bugs out, the only issue I had once I got the amounts right for the amount of carts I needed for the dispensers and what have you in the input, where it'll just kind of auto protect with it down there, because one of the versions I didn't have as many chests up here, and it ran out of mine carts, and that would break the system. The only other issue I had was if the input wasn't chunk aligned, and I had it in such a manner on one of them where it just kept breaking. I didn't know why, so I just checked it because I was just pasting without really paying attention to it. And now I'm not 100% sure. I know this is kind of silly coming from me, the guy who created this, but I don't know exactly what part of it is what breaks when it wasn't aligned properly, but I tried to get it like all this in here, and it seemed to work that way. I don't know if I just got lucky and it was something else, but I just couldn't figure it out, and then I finally rebuilt it in just a different location, and everything else is the same, and it worked fine. So as far as I know, that's the only chunk aligning issue is the input. And then other than that, you can still see all this stuff going off. It's a lot of items. I think it's, it's more than like 50,000. You can see all the temporary. You can get a rough estimate. Yeah, so we're almost done actually. And you can see right here, it has a pretty good, when you have a balanced blend of items going in. And I'm not saying they have to be a perfect blend of all of these, but the more variety you have and less lopsidedness going to a single column, the faster it'll be. Now it's still really fast, even if you're sending a bunch to one column. It'll not only clear the input quickly, but it'll also still chunk away at those at double hopper speed until you send too much to it and it'll go down to hopper speed. But see, most of this has been lit up the whole time this has been going on. And unlike the previous versions, I had to, because of the way the inlet filters are, I had to have more of them. So I have these double chests full of shovels, wooden shovels, just something that was cheap. And yeah, here was Rapscallion's very compact model. This is another thing that would have the entities piling up. I don't know a good solution for it, but if you send a bunch to a side, so whether it be this side, that side, or this side, the index cards, when they come down there, they'll drop the card itself plus all the filters in it, the other cards. When you have so many of them, like I was testing where I just overloaded columns, you'll get a bunch of minecarts sitting on top of the hoppers because it can't pull them down fast enough. Now, it would never despawn any of them, but it was, it's extra lag because it's just a bunch of extra entities there. But it was to such an extreme. I don't think that's really ever an issue. I'm generally not sorting, that many items because I was trying to break it, trying to make maybe lag have an impact on it, and just, it was going for 20-30 minutes at this speed trying to overload the columns, and it still wasn't. But you would get a bunch of minecarts sitting on top of the hoppers. When you have the blend, which is more natural, when you have less items, that won't be a thing. But it was just for the sake of trying to test the limits and make sure it would be reliable. Ever since the input issue being chunk aligned, I've ran a few million items probably through different versions of it, the directions, because I had to rebuild sections of it, and I wanted to make sure I didn't miss blocks and whatnot, so I tested each one, and without fail, they've all worked. So if there is an issue, I apologize for that. I definitely tried to eliminate them all. And if I do come up with anything else, hopefully I can make some improvements to it. I think it's pretty good on the size aspect relative to the speed. It's not something I would care about given how fast it is. I know some people, they like it more compact, and that's fine. Once again, that's what's great about all the different designs out there, is you can always get the one that fits your need the best. And but for now, this is probably what I'll be using moving forward. So thank you.